Elena Price heard the distress call at 3 in the morning. She was alone in the communications hub on Kepler 442b, checking the long-range sensors one more time before she left for sleep. The signal came through broken and desperate. It was not human. The voice was strange, with high tones that made her skin prickle. It was the voice of a Voldari. The Voldari were supposed to be the peaceful ones. For 10 years, the Galactic Council had told all human colonies that the Voldari were scholars and artists. They built great libraries. They created music that moved even the coldest hearts. They did not fight. They did not kill. They simply lived and thought and shared their knowledge with the few species that would listen to them. But someone was killing them now. Elena listened to the message again. The Voldari voice was screaming. There were sounds in the background like nothing Elena had ever heard before. The sounds of weapons. The sounds of people dying. The sounds of a world ending. The message said, "This is Voldari High Command. Our world is under attack. The Krau have come without warning. Our defense systems are gone. Our cities are burning. We have sent messages to every species in the Alliance. We beg for help. We beg for mercy. Please, someone answer us. Please, come." The message ended. It repeated. It repeated again. Elena sat very still in the dark communications hub. Around her, the colony was sleeping. On the other side of the colony, Director George Hayes was in his bed. Captain Marcus Webb was in the officers' quarters. The rest of the 300 colonists were scattered through the habitat domes, dreaming of Earth or their homes or their families. Elena was the only one awake. The distress call had come to her. The choice was going to be hers first. She could ignore it. The protocol was clear. Small colonies did not fight wars. Small colonies did not send ships into danger zones. Small colonies survived by staying quiet and staying small. She could file a report. She could send it to the Earth government. She could let someone else decide what to do. But she knew the Voldari. Not well, but she knew them. 2 years ago, Elena had gone to a scientific conference on a neutral space station. She was there to share what she had learned about quantum mapping in deep space. While she was there, she met a Voldari scholar named Professor Kryn. He was small, with thin arms and large eyes. He was kind. He had spent 2 hours listening to Elena's research and asking good questions. He had shared his own work about space-time mapping. He had told her that he hoped Earth and the Voldari would be friends for many generations. That was Professor Kryn. That was the man whose homeworld was burning right now. Elena opened the secure channel to Captain Marcus Webb's personal communicator. He answered after 2 rings. "Price?" "It is 3 in the morning," he said. His voice was rough with sleep. "Sir, we are receiving a distress call from the Voldari system. The Krell are attacking. Their cities are burning. They are asking for help?" There was a long silence. Elena could hear Marcus breathing on the other end of the channel. "Send me the recording," he said. He did not sound like he was in bed anymore. Elena sent the file. She heard him listening to it. She heard him listening to it again. "I will be at the communications hub in 5 minutes," Marcus said. "Do not tell anyone else yet." Marcus Webb arrived in exactly 5 minutes. He was a tall man with dark hair and a face that never showed much emotion. He had been a military captain before he took the job managing security for a small colony in the middle of nowhere. He looked at Elena, and then he looked at the recordings on her screen. He listened to the message twice. "What is our status?" he asked. "The Eleanor is ready for flight," Elena said. The Eleanor was their only real ship. It was a research and exploration vessel, not a warship. It had been built to study planets and take samples from asteroids. It had some weapon systems, but they were designed to defend against pirates and equipment malfunctions. They were not built for real war. "How many can we take?" Marcus asked. If we strip the science equipment and install emergency bunks, maybe 20 people, Elena said. And supplies? 1 month if we are careful. Maybe 6 weeks. Marcus nodded slowly. He walked to the window and looked out at the planet below. In the distance, the lights of the habitat domes glowed against the dark. The Vaulderie can teach us things, Marcus said. They have been studying space travel for 300 years. We have been doing it for 50. They share knowledge freely. Professor Kryn was the one who helped us understand the jump gates, was he not? Yes, Elena said. He published a paper with our research team last year. Then they have shown us kindness, Marcus said. He turned away from the window. His eyes were hard now. And the Krell are killing them. The council said the Krell were just traitors. The council said the Krell were reasonable. But a reasonable species does not attack without warning. A reasonable species does not burn cities full of people. Elena waited. She knew Marcus was thinking about what came next. She knew he was calculating the cost. We cannot save them all, Marcus said finally. Our ship is too small. Our weapons are too weak. We do not have enough people. No, sir, Elena said. But we can make a difference, Marcus continued. We can put ourselves between the Krell and the people running away. We can buy time. Time is the most valuable thing we have. The director might not approve, Elena said. Taking our only real ship into combat, risking people's lives. Marcus looked at her. Are you asking me to ignore a distress call? Elena thought about Professor Kryn. She thought about the screaming in the background of that message. She thought about a world burning. No, sir, she said. I am not. Marcus walked to the communications console. Wake up Patricia Morrison. Tell her to get to the hangar. Tell her to begin flight checks on the Eleanor. Tell her we are going to war. Sir? Elena felt her heart race. We are human, Marcus said simply. A human answers when someone screams for help. That is what we do. That is who we are. Elena sent the message. Within minutes, messages started coming back. Lieutenant Patricia Morrison asked if this was a real order. Engineer Rachel Davis wanted to know what had happened. The rest of the skeleton crew began waking up, asking questions, preparing themselves for something they had never done before. By the time Director Hayes arrived at the communications hub, Marcus had already begun forming a plan. Elena watched her captain stand before the director, and she saw something shift in her world. The colony was no longer just about survival. It was no longer about staying small and quiet and safe. It was about answering when someone called for help. Even if that help cost everything. Even if that help might get them all killed. Elena thought about what Marcus had said. That humans answered when someone screamed. That this was who they were. She thought it was true. She thought that was exactly what made them human. Out here in the darkness of space, far from home and safety. The Eleanor would launch before the sun came up. The crew would be ready. And somewhere in the Vaulderie system, people were dying, hoping that someone, anyone, would answer their call. Elena Price did not know yet that this decision would change everything. She did not know that the galaxy was watching. She did not know that a single ship and a crew of brave people would teach the universe something about what it meant to be human. She only knew that Professor Kryn was screaming for help, and Earth was going to answer. The jump to the Vaulderie system took 12 hours. During that time, the crew of the Eleanor prepared for death. This was not something anyone said out loud, but everyone knew it. They were taking a research ship with minor weapon systems to fight a war fleet. The math was simple. The outcome was clear. Patricia Morrison sat in the weapons control station and tried to make the Eleanor's defenses into something that could actually hurt the Krell. She worked through equations and power calculations. The ship had 2 forward plasma cannons and 4 missile tubes. On a normal day, These weapons were used to clear asteroid fields or defend against small pirate ships. They were not built to punch through military-grade shielding, but Patricia had always been good at solving problems that had no solutions. If we overcharge the plasma cannons, we can increase the output by about 30%, she said to Marcus. But we will only be able to fire them 5 times before the capacitors burn out. How long between shots? Marcus asked. 3 minutes each, Patricia said. We would need to hit them very precisely to do any real damage. Marcus nodded. He was looking at the tactical display, watching the positions of the Krell ships as they orbited the Voldari homeworld. The homeworld was called Kaldran. It was a beautiful planet, blue and green, full of oceans and forests. Elena had seen pictures from the scientific conference. She remembered Professor Kryn talking about the great cities that floated on the water, and the great libraries that held 2,000 years of knowledge. Those cities were burning. Now, the Krell fleet was massive. 15 capital ships circled the planet like predators. Their weapons were tearing through the Voldari defense grid systematically. The Voldari had tried to fight back. Elena could see the wreckage of their warships in the sensor data. But the Krell were too strong. The Krell were always too strong. When the Eleanor made the jump into the system, the Krell detected them immediately. Unidentified vessel. Unidentified vessel. You are entering a designated combat zone. The Krell message came through. It was automated and cold, like a machine speaking words. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. Marcus opened a channel to the Voldari. This is Captain Marcus Webb of the Earth research vessel Eleanor. We received your distress call. We are here to help. We repeat, we are here to help. The response came fast. It was not from high command. It was from a voice that sounded desperate and young. Thank you. Thank you. We did not think anyone would come. Please, we have thousands of people in the southern cities. The Krell are moving toward them. Please, help us. We will, Marcus said. He cut the channel. Patricia, full power to forward shields. Elena, get me detailed tactical information on those Krell positions. Rachel, I need you to be ready to shift power between weapons and engines at a moment's notice. We are going to fly between them and the population centers. Captain, that is directly into their weapons fire, Rachel said from engineering. Yes, Marcus said. He did not say anything else. The Eleanor accelerated toward the largest population center on Kaldran. It was a city called Kelmar, and it held nearly 2 million Voldori. Elena watched the sensor data and saw the Krell cruisers changing course to intercept them. The first volley of weapons fire came when the Vilai Eleanor was still 2,000 kilometers away from the city. The plasma bolts lit up the darkness of space like angry stars. The Eleanor's shields flared bright blue under the impact. Shields at 92%, Patricia called out. They are targeting us. Multiple ships. Hold course, Marcus said. Do not evade. Just hold course. Elena gripped her console. She was watching the city grow larger in the view screen. She could see the lights of Kelmar below. She could see the weapon's impact on the surface. She could see people running through the streets, trying to escape. The second volley hit them. The ship shuddered. Elena heard the sound of something breaking somewhere in the engineering section. The lights flickered. Shields at 81%, Patricia said. If this continues, we will lose our shields in 4 more volleys. Then we hit them now, Marcus said. Patricia, forward cannons. Fire when ready. Do not wait for a lock. Just fire. Patricia's hands flew across her console. The Eleanor's plasma cannons came to life for the first time in anger. The weapons that had been designed to study asteroids now reached out across the darkness and struck a Krell cruiser. The impact was not dramatic. There were no explosions. But on the tactical display, Elena saw something shift. The Krell cruiser's shields flickered. "It worked," Patricia breathed. "Captain, I hit their shield generators." "Again," Marcus said. "Fire again." The second shot missed. The third shot hit another cruiser. The fourth shot missed completely. The Eleanor was still being torn apart by return fire. Shields were dropping. The ship was taking damage, but something was happening. The Krell ships were beginning to move. They were beginning to adjust their formation. For the first time, they were not certain. "The Krell are confused," Elena said, reading the sensor data. "They expected us to run. They are changing position." "Good," Marcus said. "That is good. Patricia, keep firing. Every 3 minutes. Keep hitting them. Keep them confused." The battle went on for hours. The Eleanor danced between the Krell ships, taking fire, returning fire, pushing forward toward the city. The crew worked without stopping. Rachel managed the power systems, shifting energy from shields to weapons and back again. Patricia fired the plasma cannons with precision and courage. Elena fed targeting data to Patricia and kept Marcus updated on the Krell movements, and Marcus stood on the bridge and commanded them with the kind of calm that only came when you had made peace with your own death. The Krell ships were damaged now. Multiple cruisers had lost shield systems. One had ceased firing completely, its systems too damaged to continue. The Eleanor had taken severe hits. The shields were barely holding. The hull had been breached in 2 places. 2 crew members had been killed when a reactor conduit exploded, but the Eleanor had not retreated. The Eleanor had not yielded. "The Krell fleet is moving back," Elena said. She could not believe it. "They are retreating from their attack positions. The Voldari cities are moving out of the primary target zone." Marcus nodded slowly. He looked tired. He looked like a man who had aged 10 years in 10 hours. "Send a message to the Voldari," he said. "Tell them to evacuate to the southern continents. Tell them we will hold this position as long as we can. Tell them we are human, and we do not leave people to die alone." Elena sent the message. As she did, she watched the data on her screen. The Krell were not retreating because they were defeated. They were retreating because they were surprised. They had expected an easy conquest. They had expected the Voldari to fall quickly. They had not expected anyone to answer the call. They had not expected a small research ship to stand in their way. But the Eleanor was standing now. Damaged and dying, she was still standing. And as long as she stood, the Krell could not reach the cities. As long as she stood, the Voldari had time to run. "How long can we keep fighting?" Marcus asked Patricia. Patricia looked at her console. The numbers, they were not good. "Maybe one more engagement," she said. "After that, the shields will fail. The engines will fail. We will be just debris. Then we will make it count," Marcus said. "We will hold this position. We will keep them back. This city will not fall today. These people will not die today." Elena understood then what they were really doing. They were not here to win a war. They were here to buy time. They were here to say no. No, you will not have these people. Not today. Not while we still have breath. And in the darkness of space, above a burning world, a small ship and a crew of humans made that stand. The ceasefire came at sunrise on the Voldari homeworld. Not because the Krell had given up. Not because the Eleanor had defeated them. But because something had shifted in the balance of power in the system. The Voldari were fighting back now. Elena watched the tactical display and understood what was happening. The research vessel Eleanor had done something that no one thought was possible. It had made the Voldari believe that they could win. It had made the Krell uncertain. And in that moment of uncertainty, The Voldari had reorganized the remaining ships and had begun striking back. The Krell fleet, which had seemed invincible just hours before, was now in trouble. They had damaged ships. They had lost control of several orbital positions. Most importantly, they had lost the initiative. The Voldari were no longer running. They were fighting. Marcus stood on the bridge of the Eleanor and watched the battle unfold. The ship was barely functional now. The shields were holding at just 30%. The main reactor was running on auxiliary power. 2 crew members were dead. 3 more were in the medical bay with injuries that might never fully heal. But the Eleanor was still there. The Eleanor was still fighting. "Hailing frequencies," Marcus said. Elena opened the channels. She broadcast on all known frequencies, on every band that the galactic community monitored. "This is Captain Marcus Webb of the Earth research vessel Eleanor. We are broadcasting to all parties in this conflict. The Krell invasion of Voldari space is over. The Voldari have the right to their own world. The Voldari have the right to their own future. If the Krell wish to discuss peace terms, we are willing to negotiate. If the Krell wish to continue fighting, we will continue fighting. But understand this. We will not yield. We will not retreat. We will stand here until the last person on this crew is dead." Elena heard the words and felt something shift in her own heart. This was not bravery. This was not heroism. This was simply truth. Marcus was saying that some things mattered more than life. Some things mattered more than survival. The right of the Voldari to exist mattered more than their own lives. The Krell responded within minutes. Their message came as a formal ultimatum. The Krell demand that the Voldari surrender their government to Krell authority. The Krell demand exclusive mining rights to all Voldari resources. The Krell demand 1 million Voldari citizens as compensation for military losses. If these demands are not met within 1 rotation of your planet, the Krell will resume the attack and will exterminate the entire Voldari species. Marcus did not hesitate. He sent back a message that was simple and final. The Voldari will not surrender. The Voldari will not give up their resources. The Voldari will not surrender any of their people. These are not demands that will be negotiated. These are demands that will be refused. The Eleanor speaks for Earth, and Earth says no. The silence that followed was deep. Elena could feel it in the communication systems, in the way the galaxy seemed to stop and listen to what had just been said. Professor Kryn contacted them on a secure quantum channel. He looked even worse than before. His clothes were torn. There was blood on his face. But his eyes were clear. "What have you done?" Kryn asked. It was not an angry question. It was a question full of wonder. "We have given you time," Elena said. She was speaking because Marcus was still giving orders to the crew. "We have bought you time to organize. What you do with that time is up to you." "You have given us something more than time," Kryn said. "You have given us hope. You have given us the belief that we do not have to accept death. You have taught us that a species can choose to fight, even when fighting seems impossible." Over the next 3 days, the impossible became reality. The Voldari coordinated their remaining warships under a unified command. The Krell, expecting a quick victory, found themselves in a grinding conflict. The Eleanor did not fight anymore. The Eleanor had given everything it had. But the Eleanor did not need to fight anymore. The Voldari were fighting now. And the message spread through the galactic network. The message that a species had stood against the Krell. The message that a small ship crewed by humans had said no and had meant it. The message that mercy was not weakness. Mercy was strength. Mercy was the decision to stand between the powerful and the helpless. Even if standing meant you would be destroyed. By the 3rd day, the Krell began withdrawing their ships. They did not announce surrender. They simply began the long retreat out of the system. The Eleanor, crippled and barely moving, watched them go. Elena felt tears on her face. Around her, the crew was silent. They had survived. Somehow, impossibly, they had survived. Marcus called the crew to the main observation deck. He stood before them, and Elena saw the true cost of command on his face. He looked like a man who had aged 10 years in 10 days. "We lost 2 good people," Marcus said. Specialist Lucas Grant and Ensign Maria Reyes. They died so that the Voldari could live. We will remember them. The galaxy will remember them. And they will never be forgotten, because they died so that a species could continue to exist. He paused. The crew was listening to every word. What we did here was not about war, Marcus continued. What we did here was about choice. We chose to answer a call for help. We chose to stand between the predators and the prey. We chose to say that life matters more than our own safety. That is what humans do. That is what we have always done. That is what we always will do. Elena understood then that the crew of the Eleanor had become something more than colonists. They had become witnesses. They had become proof that humans, for all their weakness and youth in the galaxy, had something the older species had lost. They had the ability to sacrifice. They had the ability to choose mercy, even when power would have been easier. The Voldari government officially thanked them. Professor Kryn came to the Eleanor personally to meet Marcus and Elena. He brought gifts and honors and gratitude that spilled out in words they could barely contain. "What can we offer you?" Kryn asked. "What can we give you that would begin to repay this debt?" Marcus looked at the Voldari scholar. "Tell the galaxy what happened here," he said. "Tell them that Earth answered when someone called. Tell them that humans do not calculate the cost of mercy. Tell them that when you scream for help, there is a species that will answer. That is all we ask." And Kryn promised that he would. He promised that the story would spread through every star system and every world. He promised that humanity would be remembered not as merchants or explorers, but as the species that answered when someone was dying. As the Eleanor began the long journey home, Elena stood on the observation deck and looked back at the Voldari homeworld. The cities were still burning in places, but they would be rebuilt. The Voldari would live. And somewhere among the stars, the message was spreading. The message that changed everything. The message that said Earth had answered. And Earth would answer again. The Eleanor limped back toward Earth space like a wounded animal. The journey that should have taken 12 hours took 5 weeks. The ship was held together more by hope than by functioning systems. Rachel Davis worked 80-hour days in engineering, keeping the reactor stable, keeping the life support running, keeping the Eleanor alive. Marcus Webb sat in the captain's quarters and did not sleep. Elena found him there on the 7th day after leaving the Voldari system. He was staring at the wall and his hands were shaking. "Sir?" Elena said carefully. Marcus looked at her without seeing her. "We were supposed to die," he said. "I ordered those people to do something that should have killed them. I ordered them to stand in front of weapons that could vaporize a planet. And they did it. They followed an order that should have been a death sentence, and they survived it." "Yes, sir," Elena said quietly. "That is not courage," Marcus continued. His voice was empty. "That is not bravery. That is just luck. I sent good people to do an impossible thing, and we survived by luck. How many times can luck hold before it breaks?" Elena did not know what to say. She understood what Marcus meant. They had survived something that had no business surviving. And that survival came with a cost that Marcus was only now beginning to understand. The cost of command. The cost of ordering people into danger. The cost of knowing that 2 crew members had died, and that he had been the one who sent them into the situation where they died. "Sir." "You saved a world," Elena said finally. "I sent 2 people to their deaths," Marcus said. Everything else is just words we tell ourselves to make it easier. Elena left him there. She understood that some things could not be fixed with words. Some things had to be carried. Some things were just the price of command. The Eleanor arrived at Kepler 442b on the 52nd day after leaving the Voldari system. The colony came out to meet them. Elena had sent messages ahead, so they knew what had happened. They knew about the battle. They knew about Lucas Grant and Ensign Maria Reyes. They knew that the Eleanor had changed something fundamental. Director George Hayes stood at the hangar entrance and watched as the crew disembarked. He was a political man, trained to think about consequences and ramifications. Elena could see him calculating already. He was thinking about what the Earth government would do with this information. He was thinking about what other colonies would ask. He was thinking about the implications. But first, he just watched the crew come down the ramp. He watched Marcus Webb, who looked like a man made of glass. He watched Patricia Morrison, whose hands would shake for the rest of her life whenever she had to fire a weapon again. He watched Rachel Davis, who had aged 10 years in 5 weeks of keeping a dying ship alive. "Welcome home," Director Hayes said simply. The formal ceremony came 10 days later. The colony had built a memorial garden in the 56 hours since the Eleanor's return. 2 stones sat in that garden. One had the name Lucas Grant. One had the name Maria Reyes. The entire colony stood in the garden while Marcus spoke. "These 2 crew members chose to answer a call for help," Marcus said. His voice was steady now, though his hands still shook slightly. "They chose to do something that had no good outcome. They knew the odds. They knew they might die. And they did it anyway, because that is what humans do. We do not calculate cost and benefit when lives are at stake. We answer, we stand, we sacrifice. And when they ask us what we did when the innocent were being murdered, we can look them in the eye and say we tried. We tried to help. We tried to save them. And that is enough." Elena stood in the crowd and listened. She thought about Professor Kryn and the Voldari. She thought about the message that was spreading through the galaxy. She thought about Lucas and Maria, who would never go home again. But she also thought about what Marcus had said. We answer, we stand, we sacrifice. That was what humans did. That was what the galaxy was going to learn about Earth. The messages started coming in from other colonies within days. 3 other human settlements requested information about responding to distress calls. 2 colonies asked about establishing permanent military-style forces. 1 colony, all the way on the other side of known space, asked about mounting a rescue operation for a species threatened by the Crow. The Galactic Council issued a formal statement recognizing the Earth-Human Coalition as a spacefaring civilization with military capability. They offered trade agreements. They offered technology sharing. They offered everything except the one thing that would have mattered to Marcus: a way to bring Lucas and Maria back home. 1 month after the Eleanor returned, Elena received a personal message from Professor Kryn. He was standing in what looked like a rebuilt city. The light was different now, brighter, fresher. "Elena," he said, and his voice was full of something like wonder. "The message has spread. Every species in the known galaxy knows what you did. Every world knows that when they call, Earth will answer. I have received requests from 17 different species asking if Earth would help them. The Krell are withdrawing from 3 star systems because they understand now that humans will fight, that humans will sacrifice, that humans cannot be intimidated into accepting genocide." He paused. "I do not know if that makes it worth the cost," Kryn continued. "I do not know if the lives of 2 humans are worth the safety of thousands of worlds. But I know this. When I think of my home world, when I think of the cities that still stand, when I think of the children who will grow up to learn and create and build, I think of your crew. And I am grateful. With my entire being, I am grateful." The message ended. Elena saved it. She watched it again and again over the following weeks. Marcus recovered slowly. He took a leave of absence from active command. He spent time in the rehabilitation center, working with counselors who tried to help him understand that following orders and sending people into danger was the weight of command, not a failure. He worked with physical therapists to get his hands to stop shaking. He worked with himself to find peace with what he had done. One morning, 3 months after the Eleanor's return, Elena found Marcus in the memorial garden. He was sitting on a stone bench, looking at the 2 names carved into stone. "I did not know them very well," Marcus said. "I knew them as crew members. I knew their names. I knew they were competent. But I did not know them like a friend knows them." "No, sir," Elena said quietly. "That is the hardest part," Marcus continued. "If I had been their friend, if I had known them deeply, then I could at least grieve properly. But I sent them to their deaths knowing them only as crew. And now all I have is guilt and the knowledge that the galaxy will remember them. But they will not know that. They will not know that they became heroes to billions of people." Elena sat beside her captain. "They would know," she said. "Somehow, I think they would know." Marcus nodded slowly. "Perhaps they would," he said. "Perhaps that is what humans do. We look at the impossible thing in front of us. We sacrifice our own people. And we build something that matters from the ashes of that sacrifice. We take the worst thing we can imagine and find meaning in it. We take death and make it matter." He looked at Elena. "That is the most human thing we do," Marcus said. "It is the thing that sets us apart. It is not our weapons or our strength. It is our ability to take tragedy and refuse to let it be meaningless. We make it mean something. We make our people mean something. We make their sacrifice matter for all eternity." And in the memorial garden, under the strange stars in a distant world, Elena understood that Marcus had found his peace. Not the peace of forgetting, but the peace of understanding that some costs are worth paying. Some prices must be paid so that others can live. And some humans are born to stand in that gap between the predators and the prey, knowing that standing there will break them, but standing anyway. 1 year after the Eleanor returned home, the Galactic Council issued a formal invitation. The Earth-Human Coalition was invited to take a full seat at the governing table, not as a registered colony with limited rights, not as a developing species with potential, but as a full member of the galactic community with all the authority and responsibility that came with that position. Marcus Webb read the invitation and said nothing for a long time. He was stronger now. He had recovered most of his strength, though Elena could see that something inside him had been permanently changed. The decision to sacrifice his people had cost him something deeper than physical healing could fix. "What do you think?" Elena asked him. "I think it means the cycle will continue," Marcus said. "Other species will call. Other worlds will burn. And humans will answer because that is what we have proven we do. We answer. And we will keep answering until the day we are too weak or too small or too broken to answer anymore. Is that a bad thing?" Elena asked. Marcus looked at her. "I do not know," he said. "I think it is the most human thing we could possibly do. But I also think it will cost us. Again and again, it will cost us." 3 months later, the first formal request came. It was from a species called the Takth, who were being threatened by pirates that the larger galactic powers would not engage. The Takth asked for Earth's help, and Earth answered. A military cruiser was built. It was designed as a warship, not a research vessel. It was built by humans who had learned what it meant to fight. It was crewed by humans who understood the cost of mercy. And it went to help the Takth, and the Takth were saved. The message spread further. Another crisis. Another call. Another world burning. And again, Earth answered. Elena watched her world change. The small colony that had been content to study asteroids and map planets became something else. It became a place of warriors. It became a place of sacrifice. It became the world that had said no to the Krell and had meant it. 2 years after the Eleanor's return, Elena was promoted. She took a position with the Earth government's diplomatic corps. It was her job to evaluate requests for aid, to determine which calls to answer and which to refuse. She understood the weight of that responsibility. Every choice would cost lives. Every decision would mean that someone would not come home. She made her first difficult choice, 6 months into her new position. A colony was being attacked by raiders. The colony was small and had little strategic value. The cost of sending a military vessel would be significant. The chance of success was moderate. By all logical calculations, it was not worth the cost. Elena sent the ship anyway. She knew why. It was because of Lucas and Maria. It was because of Marcus standing on the bridge, ordering an impossible thing. It was because of the principle that had been established when the Eleanor had answered the Valdora's call. When someone screamed for help, Earth listened. Earth answered. The cost did not matter. What mattered was that someone was dying, and Earth could help. The mission succeeded. The colony was saved. One pilot was killed. Elena approved the Medal of Honor that went with the name of that pilot. She attended the memorial ceremony. She watched the family of that pilot, and she saw in their faces the same calculation that Marcus had made a year before. The calculation that their loved one had died for a principle. The calculation that this death had to mean something. 4 years after the Eleanor's return, the Eleanor itself was decommissioned. The ship had never fully recovered from the battle. It was damaged in ways that made it impossible to use for anything other than symbolic purposes. The Galactic Council suggested that Earth preserve it as a monument. Elena agreed. The Eleanor was moved to Earth, to a place where millions of humans could visit and understand what sacrifice meant. Elena stood in front of the restored ship with Professor Kryn, who had traveled to Earth for the ceremony. The Valdari scholar was older now. He had spent his time rebuilding his world, restoring the great libraries, helping his people recover from the trauma of the invasion. We would not exist without this ship, Kryn said simply. My people, my world. Everything we are and everything we will become exists because the ship and its crew stood between us and extinction. They were just doing their jobs, Elena said. No, Kryn said. They were choosing the sacrifice. That is not a job. That is not something you do because you are ordered to do it. That is something you do because you believe it matters. That is something you do because you are human. 5 years after the Eleanor's return, Marcus Webb took a position as head of the Earth military. It was a position he had never wanted. It was a position he knew he was right for, which made it even worse. He understood what war meant. He understood what sacrifice meant. He understood that some people would have to die so that others could live. The first order he gave as head of military operations was simple. Answer all distress calls. Whatever the cost. Whatever the risk. When someone calls, Earth listens. When someone screams for help, Earth answers. Elena helped him implement that order. She created the systems that would coordinate responses. She created the protocols that would ensure that humanity's promises would be kept. She became Marcus's right hand in the work of turning a principle into practice. On the 5th anniversary of the Eleanor's departure for the Valdari system, Elena and Marcus stood together in the memorial garden on Kepler 442b. The garden had grown. There were more names now, more stones, more people who had answered calls for help and had not come home. How many? Elena asked. Marcus looked at the stones. 143, he said. In 5 years, 143 humans have died answering distress calls. And I would say that I regret it, but I would be lying. I regret the individual deaths, but I do not regret the principle that led to those deaths. Neither do I, Elena said. Marcus turned to look at the Eleanor, now permanently docked in the colony's orbital platform, a monument to what humans could be when they chose to answer. He turned to look at the stars, at the vast darkness where other worlds were burning, where other species were screaming for help. The message has spread, Marcus said. Every species in the known galaxy knows now. When you call, Earth answers. When you are dying, Earth will try to save you. Some think we are crazy. Some think we are noble. All of them know that we mean it. Yes, sir, Elena said. And the cost will keep rising, Marcus said. With every mission, with every distress call, we will lose more people. And eventually, maybe, we will become too wounded to answer anymore. Maybe that is when the cycle will end. Do you think that will happen? Elena asked. Marcus looked at the stars. I hope not, he said. I hope humanity finds a way to keep answering. I hope that even when it costs everything, we keep saying yes. Because if we stop saying yes, if we stop standing between the predators and the prey, then what is the point of being human anymore? Elena understood then what had happened to her captain. He had not been healed by time. He had been transformed by understanding. He had seen what humans could be when they chose to sacrifice. And he had decided that no matter the cost, that was what they would be. The sun was setting over Kepler 442b. In the distance, the memorial garden glowed with the light of setting sun and the bioluminescence of the strange plants that grew there. And in that light, Elena saw the truth of what the Eleanor had started. Humanity was not known anymore for their merchants or their scientists or their explorers. Humanity was known as the species that answered. The species that said no to genocide. The species that would stand between the powerful and the helpless, knowing that standing there would cost everything. And that cost, Elena understood, was the true measure of who they were. That sacrifice was the true mark of honor. That willingness to bleed for strangers was what made them human. The Eleanor had answered one distress call. That answer had changed everything. That answer had taught the galaxy that humans could be counted on. That answer had set in motion a chain of events that would ripple through the stars for centuries to come. And as the sun set, and Elena stood beside her captain in the memorial garden, she understood that this was just the beginning. The message had been sent. The standard had been raised. And humanity, for better or worse, had chosen what it would be. They would be the species that answered when someone called. They would be the species that sacrificed. They would be the species that stood in the darkness and said, "No, you will not have these people. Not while we still draw breath." And that choice, that sacrifice, that impossible stand in the face of overwhelming odds, that was what would define humanity among the stars. Not for a generation, not for a century, but for all eternity.